Okay, so in this one, we are now going to show replies. We're going to allow the user to reply, and then we're also going to show the replies in the inbox. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to open up models for direct messages. And under direct message, we're going to do parent equals models dot foreign key, and it's going to be self. So it's going to take in its self, basically. We can say null equals to true and blank equals to true. I'm also going to have a related name, and I will just call it parent message. So what's going to be happening here is every time if there is a parent, let's see, there's an error here somewhere. Comma at the end of that. Okay, so every time that there is a reply, they have a parent, and the parent message would be what it's replying to, or if we do it where it's like the main parent, then we would set that as the main parent, so it stacks into one single email type of string or something like that. But we're not going to do that right now. We're just going to worry about actually replying to it and showing the previous email or the parent message in this case. Okay, so now that we have that, we can leave parent, and then we can also put replied as a Boolean field. Not a big integer, so Boolean field, and then default equals to false. Okay, so if it was replied, it's going to be false likely, or it's not going to be false until we actually reply it and set that new parent message. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go into our terminal, and we need to do a schema migration for this. So Python manage.py, schema migration, and direct messages auto, and then Python manage.py migrate direct messages. Okay, let's run the server again. And going back into Chrome, we see our messages here. If I add a reply, we'll need a view for that specific reply to handle the reply. So how we're going to do that is jumping into our URLs. We're going to copy this exactly, and we're going to paste underneath it. And then instead of view slash, I'm going to put a reply at the end because we still want the ID that's going to be coming through here. And I'll just say reply. I'll call it reply, not replay, and then the name is reply as well. So this is going to be the reply that's appended basically to the view. So if we click on this, then it's going to say reply up here to that specific message itself. Okay, so now we need to make that view. So in here, in our views, we can look at, it's going to be very similar to our compose message, with the exception of having the parent ID in there. So let's actually use compose, and we'll do reply, and then we will take the ID of that message, that direct message. So we have DM ID. So we'll do parent ID equals to DM ID. Okay. So now that we have that, we can pretty much save all this other stuff almost exactly the same, but instead now we're doing send message dot parent equals to, and we need to get the object of that parent ID. So I have to now find that parent ID, and there's another way we could do this. We could just take this out of here and put this down here and just keep this as DM ID, just to make things clear and also the same as what we've been doing. And so now we need to actually get the object for that. So we want to do get object or 404, and we also need to make sure that we have direct message. So we're actually going to do this same thing right here. And underneath this, we will change that one to parent ID. And again, we're replying to this. We're replying to that message. So it's going to be creating that new message, right? And we want to grab that as the parent, so then we can go back here and set that as the parent, right? And then parent will have to be saved as read, or replied to, excuse me. Parent.replied is now equal to true. So we can save the parent that it actually was replied to. Okay, so let's go back in here and see what I'm talking about. Now, if this is going to be set, then we want to make sure that the message, the main message that was replied to, would be turned into true. So what we're doing in here is we're getting that main message right there. And then we're going to send something, and then it's going to say we're going to make sure that parent replied. So this part right here is now true, and then it's saved. And all that's going to happen after this send message is done. So the sender is going to be request.user, and the receiver then is not going to be the same as the receiver. It's going to be the one who sent this. So the receiver on send message we won't be choosing it. We'll be using the one that was already set prior to this. So we're going to grab this part and do send message dot receiver, or dot receiver, equals to parent dot receiver, because again the parent is the one who's going to be receiving it. So the main message that we're replying to is going to be the one receiving it. So they should obviously be the one as the receiver, regardless of what we say in the composing. Now, of course, if you want to get really smart emails, you would want to get it to where if there's a list of receivers, we would apply it to that list. But that's a little bit out of the context of this class. So just keep that in mind. Right now, we're just doing kind of one-to-one communication, not like a full-on email blast type thing, because that can get a little bit more complicated. Okay, but anyways, now that we have this, and you did a refresh, or you might even have to restart the server to make sure that URL is actually working. But something to note, this receiver is not going to matter because of how we did it in our view. So we could even, in theory, have the exact same subject from the previous one. So if we were to do that, we would have to kind of set that as the previous subject, or we could just leave the previous subject up here. So compose would have to change. So we're going to have to change our view in a little bit, but I am going to just go into our view and change or leave the subject as being the parent subject. So we're going to save it regardless of what that form says. We're going to leave the subject equaling to the parent dot subject. Okay, and we could also say RE and then plus parent dot subject. So it's replying to the parent subject, right? So now that we have that, we can go back in here, do a little bit of a refresh. I can choose whatever receiver I want and some random subject, and then hi, this is Justin. That's going to be my message. I hit submit, and we don't have anything happening after it saves. But if we go into sent, we see I sent it twice, and the subject is re. And then if we go into our inbox, we don't see the inbox. So we see this in our inbox, and there's an issue with our form valid. So this is supposed to be the receiver is supposed to be the parent sender, not the parent receiver. So that was a little issue. But now we have all this all straightened away. So let's go back into our admin, and I'm going to delete some of those last messages and delete these here. And we'll test it again. Go into our messages and then into our inbox. Type reply at the end of it. The top two don't matter. So hi, this is Justin again. Subject and receiver is going to be not that person, but I saved it. And now if I go into my sent inbox, it shows it again, and it says to user Peter Griffin. And if we go back into our inbox, Peter Griffin is the one who I actually replied to. So it's showing that it went to the right person. Now Peter Griffin's inbox should show that. And then if we look into our messages again, we can also see real quick here that this first one should say read, or replied, excuse me. It does say replied, and notice it does not have a parent. and that's because it is the parent. It doesn't need to show that there's a parent. Now, on the other hand, the get this one now shows that there's a parent, and it doesn't show that it's replied or that it's read. Certain of these functions we can fix later, but nevertheless, the sender was me, and then the receiver was Peter Griffin, where before our inbox shows us we got from Peter Griffin. So that actually kind of works. Now, one other thing that we can kind of look at then is if Peter Griffin was going to be replying to this. So what I'm actually going to go do is for a message that I'm going to compose a new message, and the receiver I'm going to say is Abba. Hey, Abba, how's it going? And then I'm going to send it to them. And I sent inbox, hey, Abba, how's it going? Perfect. That is pulling through. Now back into our direct messages. I actually want to reply to this message. So I'm going to make a new message and reply to the hey, Abba message. I'm going to do it in the Django admin for no particular reason other than that it's easier than logging in and out and for showing. So the subject or the message was hey, Abba was the subject, so I'm going to copy that. And then the body, I'm going to say it's going well, thanks. And then the sender would be Abba, the receiver would be jmitchell3, so this is who it's from, or excuse me, this is who it's sent to, and these are things from me. So sent, I'm just going to say today and now, and then the parent is going to be that hey, Abba. And it has not been replied, but we can hit save. And now back into our inbox, we now see a response from Abba saying, hey, Abba. So now we see this, and if I hit reply again, doesn't matter about this stuff. It's going well. That my body will be it's going well. The subject is going to change because of what we did. So if I hit submit again and I go back into inbox, this should say read and or it should say replied. And if I go into sent, it's going to say hey, Abba. Now, for those of you who have used email long enough, would remember kind of this was like the default thing that would happen when you reply to emails. And this is kind of why, is because we're setting the reply to being again, or adding the old subject and adding in front of it. So now that we see this, the parent is hey, Abba, and it's not replied, but if we go to hey, Abba, it is replied, and it also says when it was read and all that stuff too. So that's pretty cool. Very simple, not too difficult as far as replying to messages. Now, of course, back in our inbox, if we look at any particular message, so in our view, we can now add a reply button. So I'm going to put it just at the very top, and I'll say href equals to, and we want to do URL reply, and the argument that it's going to be taking is message.id, and then we want to close let's do double quotes on the outside here, and we can hit reply. Now we see reply, and if I click on that, it will take me to replying to that specific message. And of course, as far as how it looks can be something that we can change later, but that's kind of the gist of it. And we could also have, subject up here and all those things. But now it's actually working. We can reply. We can compose messages back to somebody. And of course, we would want to actually change how this reply works, but we can do that later. For now, this is actually a pretty useful little messaging system. If you notice, I don't have anything for delete, and I'm going to kind of leave it as nothing for delete at this point. Hopefully you guys know now that you can delete it if you just made a view that grabbed this, something like that, and then you can just honestly hit parent.delete, and that will actually delete that object right there. That's one way to do it. So again, right now I'm not going to actually do that. We might do that later, but this is more of an introduction to doing. Messages in Django and something simple enough that will actually work for your users, but not too complicated to where you have to like start worrying about all these other factors that might go into actually making a solid messaging platform. So, okay, guys, we will see you in the next